You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Happy Thursday evening, folks. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to my program, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. You can also come on over and watch the simulcast in video and join the live chat room during this show at my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. Now, before we get too into things today, I think it's probably incumbent upon me to make a couple of comments about the rioting in Minneapolis and I guess extended now into LA and other places. As we all know from the viral video of a couple of days ago that there was a police officer in Minneapolis who frankly murdered a man. Now, it was in what he believed was his line of duty, but he was abusing his power, in my opinion. And when you abuse power and somebody ends up dying, is that manslaughter or is that outright murder? I think that's the questions that would have to be given. Yes, even this U.S. citizen, this cop who did something as atrocious as he did, is still considered innocent until proven guilty by a court of law, according to our Constitution. He deserves a fair trial. Now, he might not get one, and the facts might just come out very easily that he acted improperly and therefore has to have justice served up to him on a nice, cold, impartial platter. And that's my take on that. He did something wrong. Now, we can try to justify it away, as I'm sure his attorneys will probably do, and hopefully it gets that far as a trial. He's been fired. Why was he fired if he didn't do something wrong? So he's going to face a trial on this, and his attorneys will probably use, he's a cop, he's under stress every day, day in and day out for how many ever years that he was a cop in Minneapolis. He had to put up with crap, and it all came out in the way he arrested this man, which is not an uncommon procedure, but if the knee ever goes to the neck, so I have heard from people in law enforcement, you remove it from the neck. You put the knee on the back of the shoulder, on the middle of the back. Sometimes a knee will slip. You pull that knee up off because you can injure somebody. Now, did the guy he was arresting, maybe he was a douchebag, maybe he was a creep, maybe he was a thief, whatever it is, but he's still a human being. He still deserves the protecting and the serving that a police officer is supposed to give people who even aren't being arrested for something. And so he, being arrested by this police officer, still deserved to be protected and served. He had to be incarcerated. Is incarcerated the right word? He had to be arrested and taken in. That does not prove he did anything wrong, even if the officer saw his actions, even if he resisted arrest. But there was a point where you could see, even in the video, everybody around him was saying, look, the guy's not resisting. You should take your knee off of his neck. And then what do people do? They're afraid of getting shot or attacked by the police if they try to take it into their own hands. And so it's a good thing there was the video. It's a good thing this guy's fired. It's a good thing he's going to face trial. Pretty sure he's going to face trial. And it will be a good thing, I think, if he gets convicted of something like murder, even manslaughter, although I think it's more than manslaughter. Was he out to cold-bloodedly kill this man? No. But I think caught up in the heat of what he was doing, he did what he did. He had the superior knee over the neck, and he had the guy in cuffs already. The guy was subdued. The guy wasn't moving. There was no need for him to keep the knee on the neck. And if that caused the man's death, which according to EMTs, when they picked him up, he was dead. He didn't die later in the hospital. Then there is a big, big problem. Now, I saw somebody just this morning, somebody made a post, and it's a person I know, and they're very much on the left of things politically, and they were making a statement about all the problems with the aftermath, the demonstrations. He says, why are people focusing on that and not focusing on the fact that the cop murdered somebody? Well, I got news for you. We are focusing on the fact that the cop murdered somebody. That's been the major focus. The fallout has been those protesting, those demonstrating. How do you rightfully, justifiably, righteously, how do you justify what demonstrators have done because a cop killed somebody? You don't go out and kill other people, which hasn't happened yet as far as I know. So I'm taking it a bit too far. You don't go out and loot stores and burn buildings and tip cars over and things like that to show how pissed off you are about a cop that killed a guy while arresting him. That's not how you do those things. You protest the government. You protest at the police station. You show the community getting together to support your cause. Why would you go out and attempt to hurt other people that are innocent, that are not involved in this, to show your angst about how you feel you've been treated or your poor place in life, your undeserving, unprivileged position in the world, according to your way of thinking? There was a building that was set on fire, and while people on the lower floors were able to get out, there were people trapped on the roof that they had to rescue. What if people died from that? Because some dumbass set fire to a building to protest the fact that a cop killed a guy that he was arresting. That doesn't make any sense to me. And so, as I said to this friend of mine online, I said, well, there's the original atrocity, then there's the atrocities committed in the aftermath. Atrocity has begat atrocity. Which one is a good atrocity? Neither. So, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with the riots. You don't have a riot over this. You demonstrate. You protest. You put your word out there. You do it in the right way. Let me take this down to a very odd example to use and very different type of thing, but I think it's fitting. When I went through a divorce, a very bad divorce back in 1993, 1994, in that area of time, there were a lot of bad things that were being done to me by my now ex-wife. There were claims being made. She made claims to the court that I was abusing her and battering her and beating her. And she thought, well, not thought, she didn't think this. She made charges that she thought I was engaging in child porn with my own twin daughters, who were at the time were 3 years old. This is all a matter of record, by the way, so I can talk about it very openly. And she was doing this to try to get a restraining order against me so she didn't have to face me. And all this stuff, I remember pacing up and down the main aisle of the sanctuary at our church during the week. And I went to visit my pastor and talk with him about this stuff. And we would pace, and I would just rant and say, why? If she wants a divorce, why should she just get a divorce? What's with all this bullshit surrounding it? And so we talked about that, and I looked at that, and I said at one point to my attorney, I said it to my pastor, I said it at the time, I said, if my ex-wife wants a divorce because she no longer wants to be married, and as it turned out, she was in an affair at the time, which we didn't know at the time, why not just get the divorce? Why make up things? Why make the matters worse for yourself and for everybody around you? Why try to proliferate lies in order to try to win your case? And so, by the way, the child porn thing, she was using photographs of our kids in the bathtub, playing in the bathtub and said, I discovered these pictures in my husband's files while he was away. Well, the good thing was that about 6 months earlier, she had sent copies of the same photographs to a very dear friend of ours out of state, and wrote her a nice letter and sent her these photos and said, look at these beautiful pictures we took of our daughters in the bathtub. Scotty and I both took these pictures of our daughters. It looks like they're doing water ballet. But she was using those same pictures, claiming in her affidavits that she had discovered them and was concerned I was engaging in child porn. And so that all worked out very well for my case. It's a good thing she sent the copies of those pictures to our friends. Bottom line, using this as an example, why would you commit atrocity to try to get your way or to win your case or to make your case? It's because her case couldn't stand on its own. There was nothing wrong. She just wanted out of the marriage. If you want out of the marriage, get out of the marriage. So take an example like that. Pull it up into this broader issue of atrocity and atrocity. Why would somebody trying to defend a class of people, defend a race of people is what it's come down to, the Me Too, not the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that, why would they want to revert to, or at least elements around them that support them, revert to, devolve to committing atrocious acts and illegal and criminal deeds in order to try to make their case? And it's because they're not making their case. They're doing what they want to do. They are opportunistic. They have found a way to make their criminal actions justifiable. Now, that might not be the whole Black Lives Matter movement. I cannot just, while I disagree with them and a lot of what they stand for, I cannot say that they are responsible for the atrocities being committed post-atrocity. So I may have used an example that didn't quite fit. It came into my mind and I thought, there are injustices that are committed in order to try to make your case. And those injustices take the wind out of the sails of your argument. And so my whole thought on this right now, there's a cop who did something wrong, committed murder of one degree or another, should stand trial for it. In my opinion, should be convicted of it because it's obvious what he did. I think the evidence would be very stacked against him. The defense against what he did is going to be kind of weak and lame. But there should also not be atrocities committed. There should not be rioting. There should be fire in the streets. The police shouldn't have to come out in force and shoot tear gas to disrupt a crowd that's demonstrating against violence, that's demonstrating against injustice. That shouldn't have to happen. But when they commit violent acts, criminal acts, they're calling that down upon themselves. Use your brains, Black Lives Matter, and people, not that they're listening to me, but I would say to them, use your common sense. Use your brain. Stand against the injustice. Stand against the injustice where it lives. If it's in the police department in Minneapolis, do it there. If it's in the government of Minnesota, do it there. Protest in the right places. Make your case known, but keep your head above the water. And this was, by the way, the point I was going to make with my divorce. That was the advice my pastor gave to me. He says, no matter what happens, Scotty, he says, no matter what she says, what she does, what legal actions, he says, you stay true to what you know is right and good and just. He said, your conscience, your actions, the things you do will dictate how you will come out in the end. And he was absolutely right. So no matter what happened, I never stepped out of line through that whole process. And and frankly, I ended up winning sole custody of my children because of it. And there's a lot more to that story, but it doesn't need to go any further than that. The same thing should apply to Black Lives Matter and all the people protesting is do not do wrong. Stay right. Keep the high righteous moral ground. You lose that righteous moral ground when you start doing stupid. And that's what's going on right now. So atrocity has been followed by atrocity. And this is what we get in this country. I don't care. I really don't give a rat's ass how underprivileged you feel or how oppressed you might feel overall as your general philosophy of life. I don't care that you might be out of work. I don't care that the COVID-19 has stolen your paycheck away. I don't care about all of that. You can be poor as shit. You can have nothing. You can be oppressed, and you can still act right. There are ways to accomplish your goals without being as wrong. It's the old adage, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but 3 lefts make a right, or 3 rights make a left, something like that. But this is the situation we're seeing now. People taking advantage of a bad situation to be bad. And that should end. And those people should also suffer the justice of their actions. Suffer is not the word. Experience the justice of their actions. All right, there you go. That's all I've got to say. Without naming all the names and going through all the facts, that's how I see it from my point of view as I sit here and watch the world revolve around me. The whirlwind swirls around you, folks. Sometimes you got to sit in the eye of the storm and wait for the right moment to insert your hand, but do it in the right way so you don't get your hand cut off. There you go. All right. Let's get back into what we were talking about yesterday. That should have been a one-for episode yesterday, but I really want to get back into this because I wanted to finish the thoughts. Remember we were talking about the things that most Americans don't know they don't know? And there was a list of 10 things, and we started going through them. I used the alcoholic brother as the example. You love them, you want to be with them. I love my country, I want to be, but there are things that you sometimes have to say, I have to distance myself from this in my country. Maybe these riots are a good case in point. And so, and before we go forward, my alarm just came on to tell me, remember, today is the 200th show anniversary of the Intrepid radio program, but it's moved out a day because we didn't do a show on Monday. So tomorrow, I'm going to try to find some interesting ways to celebrate tomorrow. If nothing else, just to mention it. Tomorrow, Friday, will be our 200th episode of the Intrepid radio program since it hit the airwaves at Odyssey Radio. So I want to thank all of you who come and watch these videos. We have some videos that get 300 to 400 views. We get other videos that get 35 views. I think it depends on the topic and how people approach it. Now that's on the YouTube channel. On the radio side with Odyssey Radio, the network side, I'm told we get about 5,000 to 6,000 views of each and every episode, or listens on the radio. So, there we are. We're sitting there. The numbers are crawling up slow but sure. I'm investing a lot of time with Rocky into the Situation Room, and that show is growing leaps and bounds. So I want to thank all of you who come over here still. Give your time to me, to this show. I love you all. I appreciate that. That means an awful lot to me that you'd be here. So tomorrow, 200th show on Odyssey Radio. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. All right, we were talking about America and what Americans don't know they don't know. I'm just going to recap. We don't know that few people around the world are impressed by us. They know we're there. They take heed of the news, some of them. They know we're here, but I don't think they're overly impressed with us. We're taught as Americans that we're exceptional, we're right, we're good, we're just, and we're the bright light on a shining light on a hill to the rest of the world. But most people, they take note of that and they move on in the rest of the world. And conversely, number 2, there aren't a lot of people that hate us out there. They just see it. We're just another country. If they're not from this country, they don't really hate us out there either. People say, people hate America. Nah, they really don't. You got your pockets of people, your political movements and things out there that want to hate America for certain reasons. But generally, people don't give a shit out there. They just want to live. They want you to live, and they want us to coexist. They neither love us nor hate us. They accept us for who we are, just like they want us to accept them for who they are. The third is that we don't really know much about the world around us. We don't know. We didn't invent democracy. We don't even have a democracy. We're a constitutionally limited republic. So we don't really understand the rest of the world. We can be students of it. We can learn some things. But overall, for the most part, we don't know much about the rest of the world, especially if you just live in America, grow up in America, work in America, play in America, and boom, and that's it, and that's all you got. So 4, we're poor at expressing our gratitude and our affection. In our culture, the appreciation and affection are implied rather than spoken outright. 5, the quality of life for the average American isn't really all that great. We still have to go pay our bills. We still work really hard to actually have very little. And that there are people who make a shitload of money, captains of industry, CEOs, I don't care. Let them. They're in a position where they've built something and they've gotten to that point. If a guy owns a company and I used to have these arguments with a guy years ago. If a man, say me or you or a woman, you build your own company from nothing. You struggle through those initial years to get it off the ground, and it finally gets to the place where you're the boss, you're hiring people, you've paid your dues, you've put in hundreds of thousands of hours and dollars to make your business grow. It's okay if you get 5 weeks of vacation and your average employee gets 1. That's okay. You're hiring somebody to do a job. You've built that company. You have earned the right to run that company and to make a little more money than the guy you hire for minimum wage or better off the street to sweep the floors of your warehouse or to do your ad sales, whatever it might be. So, 6, the rest of the world is not a slum-ridden shithole compared to us. There are shitholes out there. Don't get me wrong. But the rest of the world isn't slum-ridden. There are some big, major metropolitan cities out there, major economies out there that are not superpowers. 7, here's where we left off. And, you know what, we're at the end of our time. We got about a minute left. Number 7, we're paranoid. Not only are we emotionally insecure as a culture here in the United States, but I've come to realize how paranoid we are about our physical security. You don't have to watch Fox News, you don't have to watch CNN or MSNBC for more than 10 minutes to hear about how our drinking water is going to kill us, how our neighbor is going to rape our children, how all these sexual predator alerts are out there. Some terrorist in Yemen is going to kill us because we didn't torture him. Mexicans are going to kill us. Or some virus from a bird is going to kill us. Or some virus from bat shit in a marketplace in Wuhan, China is going to kill us. So there's a reason we have nearly as many guns as people, more guns than people. Did you know that March of this year of 2020 was the greatest spike in sales in handguns in the history of the United States? Since everybody thought they needed to secure themselves. And the U.S. security trumps everything, even liberty. We're paranoid. Benjamin Franklin said, "He who gives up a little liberty to get security will end up with neither." Now, I've been to a lot of countries. I've traveled a lot. I have friends and family that explicitly told me not to go to Egypt and other places. Oh, it's not safe. They're going to kill you. They're going to kidnap you. They're going to stab you, rob you, rape you, sell you into a sex trade. Give me HIV or whatever else. And none of that's happened to me. I've never been robbed. I've walked through some of the shittiest parts of downtown Luxor in Egypt. Some of the little towns, it's really frankly not that bad. It's not really shitty at all. And I've been in Honduras and walked through some shithole places to live. Matter of fact, there's a little town called Coxon's Hole on Roatan. It wasn't unsavory. It just wasn't clean. But people are honest. They're open. And they surprised me. I didn't expect that. And that's what I got. Honest, open people who cared about each other and who were happy to know me. My American instincts were always that, hey, wait, this guy's going to try to rob me or kill me, but you know what? They never did. Just insanely friendly. So we're paranoid in the United States. And I got to end on that on this segment. We're going to go out for a couple of minutes. Sit tight. We'll be right back and pick up and finish the rest of this. Hey folks, we're back. Thanks for sitting on through the break. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. You can also come on over, listen to, and watch the simulcast in video on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. Join the live chat room that's going on there right now. Add your opinions, meet some people, get to know the other Intrepheads who follow this show. And I want to say a little ad for myself. Go over to my Etsy page, etsy.com, that's etsy.com/shop/son of a patriot. And you can get stuff like this Intrepid Radio mug, the Intrepid Radio shirts you can get for the Situation Room, the Rocky Stucci, Scotty Roberts shirts, stuff like that. Rocky's got a little different site for the shirts that he's done up solely for the Situation Room. That's on a different site. But you can also go to streamingtalkradio.com. That is the site that's being currently rebuilt. I'm not sure the state of it at the moment. But you can go over there. You can see the links to all of this stuff. Avail yourself of some great garments. Fantastic designs. I know so because I make them myself. And come on over and pick up some stuff. We left off talking about how paranoid Americans are when it comes to travel outside our borders. We think everybody out there is going to try to kill us. We're paranoid. We need security. So on and so forth. It just ain't the way we see it. Now, maybe on a national level, we have to have a good defense. We have to make sure that we defend our borders. That is one of the jobs of the federal government, is to protect us from foreign enemies and domestic. So we left off, we're at number 8. We're status obsessed here in America. Another thing Americans don't know, we don't know, we're status obsessed. We seek attention. The way we Americans communicate is usually designed to create a lot of attention and hype. Just look at the news. look at what people in other countries think about us when they see the news headlines. And they think, wow, you guys are a bunch of cowboys out there. You all wear 6-shooters on your hip and go out in public. But it's the attention, the hype, the sensationalism that's given everything. Now, I think this is a product of our consumer culture. The belief that something isn't worthwhile or important unless it's perceived to be the best ever. Win, 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 our president says. We got to be winning. And I agree with him, but that's the way we present ourselves. Or unless it gets a lot of attention, at least. Every reality television show ever made is that way. This is why Americans have a peculiar habit of thinking that everything is totally awesome. And even the most mundane activities were the best thing ever. And it's the unconscious drive we share for importance and significance. And this unmentioned belief socially beaten into us from birth that if we're not the best at something, then we don't matter. Something I try to teach my kids is strive to be your best at what you do. Meaning give your all to something. Invest yourself in the things that are worthwhile to you. Be the best that you can be. Not be the best above everybody else. Be the best you can be. Give of yourself. Strive for excellence. But we're status obsessed in the United States. Our culture's built around achievement and production and being exceptional. And so comparing ourselves and attempting to outdo one another has infiltrated our social relationships as well. Who can slam the most beers first? A long time since I've had to enter those contests to be on top and to be spectacular and exceptional. Who can get the reservations at the best restaurant? Who knows the promoter at the club? Who dated the girl on the cheerleading squad? Socializing becomes objectified and turned into a competition. And if you're not winning, the implication is that you're not important and no one's going to like you. So we're status obsessed. And Americans, you know what? We don't realize we don't know that about ourselves. Number 9, we're less healthy than we think we are. That hits us as we start to get older sometimes sooner than that. But you start to realize I've lived a life. Look at the rise of diabetes in America. Why has that happened? Because we've spent lifetimes abusing our bodies, and then we're sad when it starts to break down. Unless you have cancer or something equally dire, the healthcare system in the United States kind of sucks for people who don't have things. The World Health Organization ranked the U.S. 37th in the world for healthcare. This was a few years ago. And now, frankly, I don't really care much about what the World Health Organization says. I think they're corrupt from the inside as well. Even though we're the nation that gives them the most money by a far stretch. And despite the fact that we spend the most per capita by a large margin. Hospitals can be nicer in Asia. With European educated doctors and nurses, they cost 1/10 as much. Something as routine as a vaccination costs multiple hundreds of dollars if you don't have insurance in this country. And less than $10 in Colombia. Before you make fun of Colombian hospitals, Colombia is 28th in the world on that WHO list, 9 spots higher than us. And so a routine STD test that can run you over $200 in the United States is free in many countries to anyone, citizen or not. Now, there's organizations that I disagree with on other fronts that offer free STD tests. You can get those done. Insurance costs people a lot of money. If you've got a great paying job, notice how much they take out of your check for health insurance. Notice what kind of deductible you have. And so it costs a lot of money to have health insurance. And by the way, I've got to say on universal health care, Obamacare sucked. in its implementation, in its various ways of carrying out what it was trying to do. You can't force the general public, the citizenry, to buy a product from the federal government. That's unconstitutional. And when they find you for not getting, that was the first big chink in the armor. But healthcare, I don't believe there's anybody in this country who should go without equal healthcare. How do you implement that is the big question. Is it federal, or does the federal create an atmosphere where the states can do their jobs? This is where we have, somebody commented to me yesterday, we have too many states. 50 is too many to control. Well, yeah, it's supposed to be that way. The states of the United States are independent states under a federal union. Federal government shouldn't be controlling the states. So there is a federal constitution, a national constitution, that we all must fall under. States can't act inviolate of the Constitution, but they can govern themselves. And I think health care should be taken to those levels. Now, we have state health care, my wife and I. It's run by our state of Wisconsin, and it's pretty darn good. And that helps for many various reasons. If we were to move out of state, we wouldn't have that kind of health care. So some states are better than others. But this isn't really getting to the real problems of our health. Our food is killing us. I'm not going to go crazy with these details, but we eat chemically laced crap because it's cheaper and it tastes better. Why do you think there are so many, let's be blunt, why are there so many fat, obese, poor people? It's like, how can they afford to feed themselves so much? Might not be so much. It's the fact that what they eat is laced with chemicals. That what they eat is bad for their bodies. You combine that with not exercising because they don't have money to exercise, they think, and you have a fat, obese populace. Our portion sizes are absolutely absurd. That's more profit for the makers. We're by far the most prescribed nation in the world, and our drugs cost 5 to 10 times more than they do even across the northern border into Canada. Profit, profit, profit. Should companies that make our pharmaceuticals make a profit? Sure they should. That's how they exist. That's how they pay their people. That's how they get the good people working for them. But should they be making a 3,000% profit off of a drug they make so you can stay healthy? So in terms of life expectancy, despite being the richest country in the world, we come at a paltry 35th. We're tied with Costa Rica and right behind Slovenia, slightly ahead of Chile, Denmark, and Cuba. Enjoy your Big Mac. So our life expectancy. Now, we're starting to get a little more common sense about our food and the way we eat. I just had a Big Mac the other day and French fries because my daughter asked for one. She and I were home alone. Everybody else was gone somewhere. I said, yeah, let's go get a Big Mac. I hadn't had one in probably 6 months. And I reminded myself why. I can't eat that crap. Sometimes it tastes good and tastes good going down, but I was unsettled for the rest of the day because I've gotten my body used to not eating that crap. All right, number 10 on the list of what Americans don't know they don't know. We mistake comfort for happiness. The United States is a country that's built on the exaltation of economic growth and personal ingenuity. Small businesses, constant growth are celebrated. They're supported above all else. Getting ahead is supported. Making your own way, pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps is all laudable. Above affordable health care, above respectable education, above everything else, Americans believe it's your responsibility to take care of yourself, to make something of yourself. not the state's responsibility. It's not your community's responsibility. It's not the village's responsibility. It's not even your friends or families in some instances. You don't rely on those things. You make your way, but then comfort sells easier than happiness. Comfort isn't easy. It requires no work, no effort. Happiness takes effort. It requires being proactive, confronting your fears, facing your difficult situations, having unpleasant conversations. We want that salve that is slap the salve on the wound rather than heal the wound. You can take that down to emotional and psychological levels. And so we're looking for comfort. We want people to comfort us. I see this over the last 35 years in reading tarot cards. People want to be comforted. They don't want happiness. Comfort me in my misery. Tell me I'm going the right way. Instead of, what do I need to do to make my happiness? Boy, if you want to see a good movie that's just popped into mind, The Secret to Happiness. Happiness with Will Smith. Fantastic movie. Watch that. I encourage you, watch that if you haven't seen it. But comfort equals sales. We've been sold comfort for generations, and for generations we bought bigger houses, separated further and further out into the suburbs, along with bigger TVs, more movies, takeout. The American public is becoming docile and complacent. We're obese. We're entitled. And when we travel, we look for giant hotels that are going to insulate us and pamper us rather than for legitimate cultural experiences that may challenge our perspectives or help us grow as individuals. We want comfort, comfort, comfort. Depression and anxiety disorders are absolutely soaring in the United States. Our inability to confront anything unpleasant around us has not only created a national sense of entitlement, but it's disconnected us from what actually drives happiness. And that is, listen to this, folks, relationships, unique experiences, feeling self-validated, achieving personal goals. These are the things that bring us happiness. But we want to be comforted instead. It's easier to watch a NASCAR race on television and tweet about it than to actually get out and try something new with a friend. I don't like NASCAR, but I've got a friend who owns a NASCAR track just a few miles from here. And I don't go because I don't like NASCAR. I can hear it some days. They've got one of two remaining, I think, dirt NASCAR tracks in the United States, if I remember that right. Cedar Lake Speedway. But unfortunately, a byproduct of our massive commercial success in the United States is that we're able to avoid the necessary emotional struggles of life, and instead we indulge in easy, superficial pleasures. And throughout history, every dominant civilization eventually collapsed because it became too successful. What made it powerful and unique grows out of proportion, and it consumes its society and its citizens. I think this is true for American society. We're complacent. We're entitled. We're unhealthy. My generation, I'm on the end cusp of the baby boomer generation. I was born in November of 1960. And they say baby boomers were post-World War II. Well, it's at the end of that 15 years after the World War II is when I was born. And I think this is true for American society. We're complacent, we're entitled, we're unhealthy. My generation is the first generation of Americans who's going to be worse off than their parents were economically, physically, emotionally. And this isn't due to a lack of resources or to a lack of education or a lack of ingenuity. It's corruption and complacency. The corruption from the massive industries that control our government's policies, and the fat complacency of the people to sit around and let it happen without saying a word. Edmund Burke said, "All it takes for the conquest of evil is for good people to do nothing." We become a do-nothing society. We complain about a do-nothing Congress. We're a do-nothing people. Now, there's things I love about America immensely, intensely. I have no hatred for the United States. And I think the greatest flaw of American culture, however, is our blind self-absorption. In the past, that only hurt other people, other countries. But now, it's starting to hurt us. This is perhaps my own flavor of arrogance, my own flavor of self-absorption, and I think I'm self-informed and more informed than the average Joe out there. But I imagine this stuff falls on a lot of deaf ears because people are happy, well, comfortable in their complacency. And so start figuring out what it is you don't know about your country, about the way we are in our country, the way we act in our country. You can look at the American dream. It's killing us. I've got a whole thing I want to talk about on the American dream, on American exceptionalism. I don't even know when I'm supposed to end. I haven't been watching the clock. I didn't see when I started this segment. So I just, I can watch the clock. I don't even know how many minutes we have left. I think we've got, what? I think we're darn close to having about 4.5 to 5 minutes left of this show. And there's so much material I have in front of me that I don't know where to begin, because I don't want to launch into something and go, oh, yeah, I started that, but you know what? Can't finish it. So maybe in this, let's talk for a minute about what we think we deserve. Mike Rowe, I listened to him. If you remember Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs, he's got a foundation that helps people get into technical college and do the dirty work of America and be happy with it. And our country, he says, is currently obsessed with determining the difference between a good job and a bad job. And it's hard to imagine a more absurd and self-defeating conversation, but there's no denying the fact that we're having it. We're obsessed with it. Why? Because we've become convinced that the road to job satisfaction is dependent on the job itself. And Mike Rowe insists that this is an absurd fear that we have as Americans of landing a bad job, as though there's such a thing. And it's affirmatively discouraging kids from pursuing a glut of good opportunities that actually exist out there. And it discourages parents and school counselors from enthusiastically recommending those same opportunities. Even kids with the good sense and fortitude to ignore the noise are still impacted by our stubborn refusal to pull our collective heads from our collective ass. And seriously, how's it possible with an economy this screwed up for a kid to feel embarrassment by any career choice? It's because it's how we want to look to other people. I respect Mike Rowe and the things he says here. How is it possible with a $1.2 trillion of student loans on the books to feel embarrassed for not borrowing money to purchase a 4-year degree? That's all you're doing. You're purchasing a degree. How is it possible with so many able-bodied people not working to feel embarrassed by choosing to learn a skill that's actually in demand out there? We simply have to eliminate the stigma currently attached to a host of worthwhile careers. If we don't, we'll get exactly what we deserve: a workforce with no balance, a crumbling infrastructure, a widening skills gap, and a country that can't make or fix anything. I wish I had learned to fix more things as a kid. I used to blame it on I didn't have a dad who showed me any of that stuff. So I learned by YouTube videos sometimes, even now. So, I think we don't deserve anything. We go out and we make something happen. We deserve what we earn. And I think that's something we got to stay focused on. For me, I know I was in advertising, as many of you know, for years and years and years. And it got to a point after, now this is 20 years ago now. When you think about it, 19 years ago, when 9/11 hit, that's when I had my last job as a creative director in the advertising world. And our company went under a couple of months after 9/11. We went from 75 employees to about 12 employees. And I was one of those last to go, between 8 and 12 people. And it was a family-owned company, so most of the family members stayed and people close to them. And so I struggled looking for work for that year and a half after 9/11. Nobody was hiring. And so, you know what I did? And I was already 40 years old, 41 years old. So you know what I had to do? I had to be like many Americans, and I had to find my own way. I once read an article several years back now of being business people talking about being out of second chances. And that meant you're getting older in the workplace. You're in your 40s. You're not the young Turk anymore between 27 and 35 years old. Oh, you're over 40 now. And your opportunities to get into new positions as the young Turk, the young buck who knows all the new angles and all the new stuff, you're getting overshadowed by the younger generation that's coming up. So it's harder to get hired unless you make your own way. And so that's what I did with what I do. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's abysmally bad. There are days I think, I need to go learn a trade at age 60 and figure out what I can do to make the income flow a little more even-handed. Because it's a roller coaster. That hellacious roller coaster of joy and absolute abysmal fear when you're stepping out on your own. But I've been on my own for 15 plus years. I only say that because I've had a couple of jobs punctuated in there in between during the 19 years since 9/11. But you go out and you make your way, and that's where your happiness comes from. You get comfort out of your happiness. And it shouldn't be the other way around, happiness out of comfort. You make your way. You make it work. And does anyone really deserve anything is the big question. The direction of change is always the same for me. Moving towards needs-based approach to inner processes, interpersonal relationships, organizational structures, social institutions. The practice itself has almost seemed nitpicky. I've almost been successful in eliminating the phrase, I have to, from my speech, replacing it instead with explicit clarity about what needs I'm focusing on to attempt to meet by choosing to do what I might otherwise tell myself I have to do. This has been a liberating practice in that I literally feel freer as a result, more aware of being an agent and owner of my life instead of driven by my circumstances, my obligations, and others' expectations of me. I've similarly attended to, I don't have the time, or I can't, or this makes me feel ... And the proliferation of terms that make something external to me the standard for evaluation, even something as innocuous as saying, you're generous, he's generous, implies a standard of generosity external to me with extraordinary results, more aliveness in me, more capacity to maintain calm and presence in difficult situations, more capacity to reach across differences and divides. I'm confident. Some people say I'm arrogant. I'm confident. I'm going to come back to these examples tomorrow. We're going to talk about this more. The language of rights, the language of needs, and what it is we think we deserve. So, folks, there you are. Americans know what you don't know. Thanks for being here. 23-hour break. No, and it'll be Friday tomorrow. Whew, I almost got a day ahead of myself. Thanks for being here. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.